A live-action Avatar show is probably already out by the time this video comes out. I'm going to be recapping Book 1 here, which is everything the live-action first season will be covering, so you can kind of compare this video to the show. I really hope it's good. Do I think it will be? No. This is probably my longest recap in terms of just total pages of script, so I really hope you enjoy. Like, subscribe, and comment, please. It would mean a lot. I'm drained. And with that being said, enjoy the video. Long ago, the four nations lived together in harmony. But everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
Dude, you can't just word for word copy the intro.
Oh, okay, you want it to be boring? Water, earth, fire, air. Avatar used to keep peace. Disappeared 100 years ago. Fire Nation launched war and are nearing victory. Better?
No, not really, but let's go.
In present day, two water tribespeople, Katara and Sokka, are out fishing for their village, but get swept away by a current and lose their boat. Katara berates her brother for his horrid steering and accidentally breaks an iceberg using her novice waterbending abilities, which reveals a boy trapped inside. Katara breaks him out, against her elder brother's advice, and when he awakens, they learn how childish this long-lost airbender is.
The airbenders have been gone for over 100 years.
This child, Ong, gives the two a ride back home on his flying bison Appa. No, it's Aang. Do not say Ong. I swear to f***ing God. I don't need to be reminded of that garbage movie. Okay, sorry. This child, Aang, gives the two a ride back home on his flying bison Appa, and when there, he greets the villagers. Then he and Katara have some fun penguin sledding, before they stumble upon a stranded Fire Nation ship. When they enter the ship to explore, Aang learns of the war, and Katara suggests that he must have been trapped in that iceberg for 100 years. A fact that shakes the youngster. They trigger a booby trap in the ship, which alerts a nearby Fire Nation ship headed by Prince Zuko, whose sole purpose is to find the Avatar to restore his honor, and he sets a course for the Southern Water Tribe village. Sokka, being the oldest man left in the village,
The men went to fight in the war 2 years ago.
banishes Aang for setting off a flare and endangering them all. Though when Prince Zuko attacks with his ship, the villagers stand no chance. But Aang returns, and everyone learns that he is in fact the long-lost Avatar. After a small scuffle, he turns himself in to spare the village, and Katara and Sokka resolve to save him, with their Grand's blessing and Appa's help. Meanwhile, Aang attempts an escape of his own, and when he enters his subconscious Avatar state, he shows off his waterbending skills. The siblings then arrive in time to give him a ride, as Katara shows off her waterbending skills. Then they escape, and the prince's attack backfires, trapping his ship in snow. The trio now agree to stick together, with their first goal being to find a waterbending master at the North Pole in order for Aang and Katara to master it.
Aang must master all 4 elements to become a fully fledged Avatar and save the world from the Fire Lord.
Their first stop on the way is Aang's home, the Southern Air Temple, but they find it completely empty, and Katara and Sokka try to hide the evidence of Fire Nation activity to save Aang from the despair. When they enter the inner sanctuary of the temple, they find statues of all the Avatars, Aang's past lives, and then they chase a lemur. Aang chases it to a graveyard, where he finds his teacher, Monk Gyatso's skeleton, and this enrages him to the point where he enters his Avatar state and blows everything away. Katara manages to calm him down, but not before the Avatar temples across the world resonate with his energy, signaling to the world the return of the Avatar.
Oh, and the lemur joined their party. They call him Momo.
Elsewhere, Prince Zuko and his uncle Iroh stop by a Fire Nation harbor to repair their ship, and when there, Commander Zhao learns of their Avatar discovery, despite Zuko's efforts to hide this fact. In order to break free from his custody, Zuko challenges the commander to an Agni Kai, a duel, and the teenager overwhelms his senior, and resumes his search for the Avatar. After the trio leave the Air Temple, they make a pit stop on an island where Aang goofs off, and they end up captured by some female warriors. When Aang learns that they are on the island dedicated to the Avatar Kyoshi, he shares that he is the current Avatar, news that quickly spreads all the way to Zuko, who readies his ship. As Aang relishes all the attention he's getting, the misogynistic Sokka is taught some humility by the Kyoshi warriors who kicked his butt, and asks to be taught by their leader, Suki. Whilst trying to ride the big bad unagi fish on the beach, Aang is knocked out, and Katara saves him, but catches a glimpse of Zuko's ship landing on the island. The firebenders begin setting fire to the village, and the Kyoshi warriors hold them off, whilst the trio escape on Appa, but not before Aang uses the Unagi to douse the village's flames. Their next stop is the Earth Kingdom city of Omashu, but they have a little too much fun in the city destroying cabbages and such,
My cabbages!
which lands them an audience with the king. The king quickly susses out that Aang is the Avatar, and sets out 3 challenges for him to complete to save his friends, before they are completely covered in crystal. He completes the first 2 challenges fairly easily, but in the third, he chooses to fight the king, an earthbending master, and he struggles to cope. Though he defeats him in the end, the king asks him one final question. What is his name? Aang considers how he had to think outside the box for all his challenges, just like his old friend Boomy used to tell him to do 100 years ago, and he connects the dots. King Boomy gives Aang some parting words of wisdom, before having some fun for old time's sake, then sets him on his way. One day, whilst scouring for something to eat, they stumble across a young man practicing his earthbending, and follows him to his village, which is under occupation by the Fire Nation. They are given a place to sleep by Haru and his mother, but when he and Katara go on a walk, she pressures him into earthbending, in order to save a trapped elder.
His mother forbids him from bending because the Fire Nation would imprison him.
The pathetic elder ends up turning the boy in that night, and the soldiers take him away. Feeling guilty, Katara devises a scheme to trick the Fire Nation soldiers into thinking she's an earthbender, so that she can save Haru. When she joins him in captivity on the metal ship, she meets his father and the other earthbenders who were taken away by the Fire Nation years ago, and attempts to inspire them to fight back. To no avail. Katara refuses to leave until she frees the villagers, and Sokka and Aang help her gather some coal together, to give them some earth to fight with. After a little push from Katara and Haru, the fight returns to the prisoners, and they break out of the ship and make their escape, though Katara loses her mother's necklace in the process. Did I mention that Katara and Sokka's mother was killed in a Fire Nation raid when they were kids? Yeah, that happened. As they continue their journey, they pass by a burned down forest, and Aang feels guilt over the fact that he wasn't around to help as the Avatar. Then an elderly man asks Aang to help his village, which has had its residents abducted by a spirit monster the last few nights. And being that the Avatar is the bridge between the human and spirit worlds, he is the most qualified to help. Having no idea what he's doing, Aang is unsuccessful in stopping the monster. Then Sokka gets captured by it, and he fails to retrieve him. He somehow finds himself trapped in the spirit world, and is visited by the last Avatar, Roku's animal guide, which guides him to his temple in the Fire Nation, where he learns that on the winter solstice, he'll be able to converse with his predecessor. When he returns to his physical body, Aang is able to calm down Heibai, the spirit of the forest that burned down, and all who were captured by it are set free. Elsewhere, Iroh is captured while soaking in a hot spring by some earthbenders, and is to be taken to the great capital of Ba Sing Se, which he once laid siege to for 600 days as a general, but failed to capture. He leaves a trail that his nephew picks up on, and when he catches up with them, the family duo, though outnumbered, outclass their opponents. Aang, in a hurry to reach the Fire Nation temple before the sun sets on the solstice, flies as fast as he can through the Fire Nation, followed closely by Prince Zuko, who learned of his destination by means of the villagers he just saved.
Yeah, but how the did he catch up to him that quick?
The Fire Nation blockade headed by Commander Zhao fires at the Avatar, but they manage to slip through. Thus they also let Zuko through, so that they can follow him to the Avatar's destination. When the trio arrive at the Fire Temple, they find that its sages, who are supposed to serve the Avatar, are hostile towards them, with the exception of one, who helps them. They trick the sages into opening the doors to the sanctuary, just in time for Aang to enter alone and converse with Avatar Roku. Roku tells him of 100 years ago, when Fire Lord Sozin capitalized on the power granted to firebenders by a passing comet to start the war. By the end of the coming summer, however, Sozin's comet will return, and Fire Lord Ozai will use its power to end the war. This gives Aang less than a year to master the remaining elements to defeat the Fire Lord, and with the solstice ending, Roku bids him farewell, but not before briefly taking over his body to scare away Commander Zhao and the other firebenders waiting to capture him. With the temple crumbling, Appa swoops in to save the trio, and Prince Zuko, who was briefly detained, also escapes. With Aang in a panic to learn the elements, Katara offers to teach him what she knows, but gets jealous at how quickly he's picking up on the techniques. When they enter a nearby town to pick up some supplies, they pass a pirate ship selling trinkets, and after Katara steals their rare waterbending scroll, they find themselves on the hunt. Though they end up escaping, the danger isn't gone, as by chance, Iroh and Zuko enter that same marketplace, and overhear the pirates talking about the thieves, and they form a brief partnership. That night, as Katara practices with the scroll, she is captured by the prince and the pirates. Then after they capture Aang and learn he's the Avatar, they fight amongst themselves over the boy's custody. In the confusion, the trio escape, and once again, Appa saves them from a tight situation, as Katara apologizes for putting them all in danger by stealing the scroll. In their next mini-adventure, Sokka's instincts lead them right into a Fire Nation camp, but as luck would have it, they are saved by a group of young freedom fighters, led by the charismatic Jet, who invites them back to his camp. Aang, and especially Katara, are infatuated with Jet and his way with words, but the next day, Sokka witnesses the young leader abusing a helpless Fire Nation elder, but his sister refuses to believe him over her crush. Jet tells Aang and Katara that he needs their help to fill the reservoir, to fight the Fire Nation's attempt to burn down the forest, when really, he wants them to help flood the dam that will kill all the soldiers, as well as the innocent people in the nearby town. Sokka overhears the real plan, and is taken on a long walk by two freedom fighters, Smellerbee and Pipsqueak. Then the next day after Aang and Katara fill the reservoir, they learn of Jet's true plan, and work together to defeat him. Unfortunately, they are too late to stop the dam from being destroyed, but Sokka, who escaped the freedom fighters, warned the townsfolk in time for them to escape. So, they leave behind the freedom fighters, and camp at the Great Divide, basically the Grand Canyon. They somehow get caught up in a century-long feud between the grubby Zhang tribe and the stuck-up Ganjin tribe, who are both hoping to cross the Great Divide with the help of the Canyon Guide to seek refuge in Ba Sing Se. Aang manages to get the leaders to agree to cross together, but after both tribes sneakily bring food along after being specifically told not to by the Canyon Guide, he gets injured, and they find themselves trapped. After a whole lot more bickering, Aang comes up with a clever strategy to use the canyon crawlers to escape, then comes up with a bullshit story about their ancestors that allows the two tribe leaders to move on from the past. On their next stop, the trio find themselves out of food and money, so Sokka takes up a quick gig to pick up some cash, whilst Aang hides away in a cave, after being yelled at by a fisherman for disappearing for 100 years when they needed him most. Katara follows him, and he tells her the story of his past. When he learned he was the Avatar, the other kids stopped playing with him, and though Monk Gyatso tried to protect him, he could only do so much. Aang was to be sent away, but before he ran away with Appa and was caught in a storm, then awoke 100 years later. Elsewhere, Zuko begins to lose order on his ship as his crew feel unappreciated, and Iroh sits down with them to tell his nephew's story. 2 years ago, the prince joined a war meeting and spoke out of turn at a general's idea that was predicated on sacrificing fire soldier lives as bait. As a consequence, the Fire Lord faced him in Agni Kai, but the youngster refused to fight his own father. But the boy was shown little mercy, as he was scarred and then banished, his only path to redemption being to capture the Avatar. Back in present time, Aang heads to save Sokka from the deadly storm, whilst Zuko, who was chasing them, prioritizes his crew's safety and lets them escape. The storm, however, did quite a number on Sokka, as he comes down with a horrible fever, and Katara follows suit, leaving Aang to search for medicine alone. Unfortunately for him, Commander Zhao has been promoted to Admiral, and he propagates flyers for the Avatar's capture all over the world. Aang heads to an herbalist on a nearby mountain, who directs him to the nearby valley swamp for some frozen wood frogs for his friends to suck on. I don't know. But on his way to get the medicine, he is captured by some Fire Nation archers, and ends up the Admiral's prisoner. Lucky for him, a strange swordsman with a blue mask breaks into the heavily fortified fortress and rescues him. Then the two fight to escape together. The masked warrior is knocked out by an arrow, just before escaping with Aang. Then our hero learns who is really under the mask, and decides to save him. Later, when Zuko awakens in the forest, he hears Aang talk about how in another time, they could have been friends. But the prince only has one goal on his mind, and so Aang runs away, retrieves the wood frogs, and his friends recover. The next village the trio come across have a resident fortune-teller named Aunt Wu, whom the entire village trusts and respects. Her assistant has a thing for Aang, who has a thing for Katara, who won't stop bothering Aunt Wu to find out exactly what her future husband will be like. The village has a tradition each year of listening to Aunt Wu's predictions on the state of the volcano, based on what she sees in the clouds, and though she predicts it to be dormant for another year, when Aang heads up there to pick flowers for Katara, he reads an entirely different situation. They jump through hoops to convince the town that they're in danger, but in the end, they only listen once Aunt Wu changes her prediction. The townspeople then come together to dig trenches, and Aang uses his powerful bending skills to keep the lava at bay.
Aunt Wu told Katara she'd fall for a powerful bender.
Soon after leaving the village, they follow the trail of a battle that leads them to a ship belonging to Katara and Sokka's father's fleet. When camping on the beach that night, they are met by Bato, a friend of their father's, and he takes them to a nearby abbey where he's been resting since his injury.
Their father and his fleet left for the Eastern Earth Kingdom.
As they catch up with Bato, Aang feels left out, and when the Water Tribe warrior mentions how word should be coming any day on a rendezvous point with their father, Sokka and Katara get excited. Aang leaves, thinking they're gonna leave him, even though he didn't stay to hear the whole conversation and how they both said we can't leave Aang. The Earth Kingdom warrior then rides past Aang and drops off the rendezvous map to him, and he jealously hides it from his friends. Elsewhere, Zuko comes across a lady who tracked a stowaway to his ship, using her pet Shirshu's incredible sense of smell, and he employs her skills to track the Avatar, using Katara's necklace. The next day, after Sokka partakes in a ceremonial ice dodging test, Aang is made an honorary member of the Water Tribe, but his guilt overcomes him, and he reveals the map to them. Enraged that he would dare hide the map from them for like 12 hours, Sokka and Katara prepare to leave with Bato to meet up with their dad, leaving Aang to head to the North Pole alone. Such a forced conflict. The nuns then alert Aang that a young man and woman came looking for him, using the scent of a necklace, and he rushes to Katara and Sokka's rescue. He and Zuko end up clashing in the abbey, and even Appa steps in to fight the Shirshu. After trading some blows, Sokka comes up with the idea to flood the area with perfume, which drives the Shirshu crazy, and it runs off, but not before temporarily paralyzing Zuko and Iroh. Shh, Iroh's fine. The trio then make up because they were all being stupid, and Aang returns Katara's necklace to her, which she is most grateful for. They then head to a fire festival so that Aang can learn some firebending up close, but they get a little too involved in the festivities, and with Aang now a widely wanted man, or kid, they are forced to flee the scene. They are helped by a former Fire Nation soldier named Shay, who leads them to a legendary firebender who left the army named Zhong Zhong, though the master refuses to teach Aang, calling him too weak and undisciplined. But when a vision of Avatar Roku appears in front of him, he is persuaded to teach the boy. The young Avatar gets fed up with his master's Mr. Miyagi-type lessons, however, and eventually makes fire of his own accord. But when you play with fire, someone always gets hurt, and he burns Katara. She runs away crying, but finds that she can heal herself with her waterbending. Then Aang is told to leave by Zhong Zhong, who is disappointed in his student. Then, his former pupil, Admiral Zhao, arrives searching for the Avatar, and Aang runs into him, as the master escapes. Just as Zhong Zhong told him, Zhao has no self-control, and Aang uses this against him, as he taunts him into burning down his own ships. The trio then make their routine escape on Appa, and Katara heals Aang's wounds, who promised himself he would never firebend again after hurting her. After a mini pit stop where the trio hear a tale about some airwalkers, Aang is filled with hope that some airbenders may have survived. But when they arrive at the Northern Air Temple, though they certainly find people flying, they're doing so with science, not airbending. When Aang sees how the current resident refugees are treating this once sacred temple, he becomes enraged at their leader, the Mechanist.
Yeah, he doesn't have a real name.
The Mechanist's son, Teo, tries to cheer Aang up, but instead they find out that his father is making weapons for the Fire Nation in order to protect his people. Though when the Fire Nation representative arrives to pick up their next batch of weapons, Aang scares him away, and they come back with a vengeance. The Airwalkers band together to fight them off, and with the help of the mechanists and Sokka's inventions, they drive off the slew of tanks and soldiers, but lose an invention to the Fire Nation as a result. Aang then gives them his blessing to continue living in the Air Temple, and their next stop, finally, is the Northern Water Tribe. They are guided to the icy fortress by the Waterbenders, and a feast is thrown in honor of their arrival, where Aang meets his new waterbending master, Pakku. The next day, he and Katara head to their first lesson, but Pakku informs them that in their tribe, it is forbidden for women to learn waterbending, and he refuses to budge on this custom. So, Katara heads to a healing lesson where she's welcomed, and the instructor recognizes her necklace, as she used to be friends with her Gran, who was born in the Northern Tribe, but mysteriously left shortly after being given that betrothal necklace. Aware of Aang's need to master waterbending, Admiral Zhao plans a huge invasion of the Northern Water Tribe, but first, he makes a visit to Prince Zuko's ship. He informs the prince that he'll be poaching his crew for the invasion, and silently connects the dots to learn that the prince is the blue beast who rescued the Avatar from him. And so, he hires the pirate crew Zuko once worked with to kill the young prince, and they succeed in blowing up his ship. General Iroh then agrees to join Zhao's invasion force, but little does the Admiral know, the prince is still alive, and has snuck onto his ship with the help of his uncle. Back up north, Sokka has taken a liking to the princess Yue, but though she seems interested in him, she has already been promised to another. One night, whilst Aang teaches Katara what he's learned, Pakku catches them in the act, and says that he has disrespected him, his teachings, and his entire culture, and refuses to teach him anymore. The next day, however, Katara challenges Pakku to a fight, and though she impresses the master, he proves too experienced for her. But when he sees her betrothal necklace, which he gave to Katara's Gran decades ago, she says how her grandmother wouldn't let their silly customs run her life, and the old master reconsiders his decision, and takes her on as a student. She quickly becomes his most successful pupil, her discipline putting her waterbending skills above even Aang's, skills she will soon get the chance to showcase as the Fire Nation arrive on their doorstep. Sokka is part of a group who volunteer for the dangerous mission of sneaking into the enemy camp, but after he gets into a fight with Yue's fiancée, he is kicked off the team by her father, the chief.
He wants him to guard his daughter, though.
Aang, determined to make a difference in the fight, does his part in taking out a dozen ships, but is overwhelmed at the size of the fleet. The fleet drop anchor at night, however, aware that waterbenders are most powerful when the moon is out, and Zuko uses this chance to sneak into the fortress with the help of his beloved uncle.
Apparently, the moon was the first waterbender, and people learned how to bend by watching the way it pushed and pulled the tides.
That night, Aang comes up with the idea to speak to the moon and ocean spirits, to receive some guidance as to how to stop the Fire Nation, and Princess Yue takes him and Katara to the most spiritual place in the North Pole. Aang then crosses into the spirit world, just as Zuko arrives, and though Katara nearly overwhelms him, he defeats her when day breaks, and takes Aang away. Meanwhile, Aang talks to Roku in the spirit world, who guides him to the face-stealing spirit named Ko, but Aang refrains from making a face in his presence, as per Roku's instruction. Ko informs him that he's already met the ocean and moon spirits, the koi fish in the pond where he crossed over to the spirit world, and tells him that they're in danger of being killed by someone. Admiral Zhao is the one after these mortal embodiments of the moon and ocean, and as his army bombard the water tribe, the moon rises, and the waterbenders grow stronger.
If you're wondering what happened to the infiltration team, this.
Aang returns to the human world with the help of Heibai, and he flees from Zuko, who had been taking shelter from the snowstorm. Then, Katara, Sokka, and Yue find him and help him escape on Appa, and run back to stop Zhao from killing the moon spirit, with even Iroh threatening him to not do something so foolish.
They saved Zuko, too.
As per Aang's wishes.
But the fool kills the fish, and Aang then enters the Avatar state, merging with the ocean spirit, as he wreaks havoc on the Fire Nation Navy. Princess Yue, who was given life by the moon spirit when she was born, makes the decision to give that life back, and as hard as that is for Sokka to accept, he knows it's the right thing to do, as the moon returns to the world. Zuko comes across Zhao, and confronts him over trying to have him killed, but the spirit comes back to take revenge on Zhao, and though Zuko tries to help him, the Admiral seems to accept his fate. After the battle ends and the tribe is safe, Paku tells Katara that he and some other benders will head to help rebuild the southern tribe, and he leaves Aang's teachings in her hands. Sokka then apologizes to Yue's father for her fate, which he appears to have been expecting since she was born, and the trio are ready to move on to their next journey. Finally, Zuko decides to put his hunt for the Avatar on hold to get some rest, whereas Fire Lord Ozai is ashamed of his brother and son's actions, and sets upon his prized daughter a different task. Well, there you have it, Book 1 recapped, left on a bit of a cliffhanger. If this video does well enough, I will do a Book 2. I'm also going to be watching and releasing a video kind of reviewing the live-action Avatar Netflix TV show, so stay tuned for that. If you made it to this point, you know what to do. It would mean a lot. Like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. Take it easy. Stay tuned for the next video, and peace.